I sort of don't exactly know where to begin. This morning, apparently, House Democratic leadership learned that for as much as a week, perhaps longer, that House Republican leadership knew that at least one of their members had tested positive for COVID-19, that other members who'd been exposed to him would eventually go on quarantine, but they didn't go on quarantine until they were done serving alongside us, especially those of us that serve on the state government committee. So for those of you that know, the Pennsylvania House of Representatives under our gerrymandered Republican leadership has been perhaps the most active state legislature in the entire country. And during that time period, during the entire COVID-19 crisis, the state government committee has been the place where all of these fucked up bills to pretend that it is safe to go back to work have been going. And every single day of this crisis, the state government committee in Pennsylvania has met so that their members could line up one after one and explain that it was safe to go back to work. It was safe to go back to race car driving or dog grooming or getting your hair cut. Meanwhile, what we're learning is that during that time period, they were testing positive. They were notifying one another and they didn't notify us. I just spent the better part of the last 11 weeks sitting across a room from people who would eventually test positive and decided not to tell us. Let me tell you why it matters to me. Let me tell you why it matters to me. I wasn't planning on talking about this until after the election, but in January, I donated a kidney. I secretly donated a kidney to somebody in my city, somebody who lives blocks away from me who was dying of renal failure. I'm so proud of having to do it, but it was not for public consumption. It was for my friends and for my family and for my staff. And every single day that our gerrymandered Republican leadership has been calling us up into this building so they could pass these ridiculous bills pretending that it was safe to be out there, they were covering up that it wasn't safe. You have no idea how the people around you are impacted, and that's why it's so important to notify people. So here's what needs to happen. Here's what I think needs to happen. First of all, Mike Turzai, the Speaker of the House, needs to resign. And any member of leadership that has known what was going on, any member of Republican leadership that knew that members were testing positive, that other members were being quarantined, and did not tell those of us who were exposed to those members, needs to be investigated by the Attorney General. And I think that there needs to be prosecutions. Holy exposing all of us up here to this crap while covering up what was going on, while simultaneously telling families that it was safe to be outside, that it was safe to be interacting with other people, while you were testing positive, while you were quarantining the people around you, while you were doing contact tracing, and not notifying a single Democratic member who has to show up here every single day for this crap. There is no legislature in the country that has met as much as the Pennsylvania legislature, and there is no committee that has met in this state legislature as much as the state government committee. And we have had to listen to this succession of members coming before us, telling us that this was fake, that this wasn't real, that there was no risks, all the while knowing that they were testing positive and withholding that from us. So I've got my eyes right now on the Republican legislature, and there's a bunch of things that I want. I want a full-blown investigation by the Attorney General. Every single member of Republican leadership that knew that this was happening, I want an investigation of what kind of contact tracing that they did. The entire Democratic House of Representatives today had to jump on a call with the Secretary of Health to figure out if it was safe for us to go back to our families. I'm in a building right now surrounded by members that can't go see their kids, that are having to call their husbands, having to call their wives and saying, honey, I might have exposed you and everybody I love in this world because one of my colleagues tested positive, but he was protecting his family, but not protecting mine. And Republican leadership protected him. I want a full-blown investigation by the Secretary of Health. I need to know if it's safe for us to be back in this building. This building needs to be scrubbed top to bottom. Holy shit. I can't believe that this is happening to me at work today. I cannot believe that this is what we are going through. People always say the parties are the same, or it doesn't matter this party or that party. You know what the difference is? The difference is values and credibility. And every single day that I've showed up at this gerrymandered legislature, I knew that the Republican leadership that was out there was fake and it was false and it was looking out for themselves. But I never, ever knew that the Republican leadership of this state would put so many of us at risk for partisanship to cover up a lie. And that lie is that we're all safe from COVID. That lie is that social distancing isn't important. One of these people, Russ Diamond walked around the House floor every single day without a mask on. Just a little bit ago, I was on the House floor, and at one point, only 4 Republican members had their masks on. Holy shit. It's not your business to put my life at risk. It's not your business to put the lives of the children of our members at risk, of the spouses of our members at risk. So, Mr. Speaker, all eyes on you. Are you going to continue to lie about your cover-up? Are you going to continue to put lives at risk? Are you going to continue to think that advancing the interests of the big banks and the big business whose pocket you're in is more important than saving lives? Well, you don't get my life. My life belongs to me. It does not belong to you. You have no business putting me and my friends and my colleagues at risk in the way that you have. You're a scoundrel, if there ever was one, Mike Turzai. You have no business in government. You have no business in the private sector. I believe that you should be investigated. I believe that you should be prosecuted. And I believe that you should be in jail. How dare you? So I'll continue to report back. I'll continue to not mince my words. I'm a Democratic member of the Pennsylvania House who just found out that my Republican leadership, in a cover-up to make sure that we didn't know that COVID-19 had breached the House of Representatives, was lying to its members and covering up from its members about that. The only way we found out is because a reporter asked one of our members, and our members got it out of their leadership. You belong in jail. Shame on you. And thank you to everybody that is asking how we're doing and what's going on. The answer is we don't know. The answer is a whole bunch of my colleagues are on the phone right now with their loved ones saying, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for what I might have done to you and not knowing that I did it. And it was Mike Turzai that did it. It was Republican leadership that did it. It was Russ Diamond that did it every single day, slamming a Secretary of Health for saying that it was risky for us to be together every single day, walking around this house without a mask. And where are you right now? You're in quarantine because you might be spreading a deadly disease to all of us and our families. This is shameful. This is disgusting. This is the height of Republican hypocrisy. This is what happens when Republicans gerrymander a state. This is what happens when Republicans take control. I've spent so much of my time here trying to see beyond the blind, disgusting partisanship, and now that partisanship has grown deadly. Deadly.
This is Brian Sims, a Democratic member of the Pennsylvania House, who found out that the Republican leadership hid the fact that a GOP member tested positive for coronavirus and yet still interacted with Democratic members, who then went back home to their families, possibly exposing their spouses to the virus, exposing their children, exposing their parents and grandparents. All the while, Republicans knew. And to make matters worse, just months ago, Brian had quietly donated a kidney to a neighbor dying of renal failure. He's recovering from kidney surgery. He's in the vulnerable population. He could lose his life, all because Republicans didn't want to undermine their own talking point by admitting that a GOP member tested positive for the virus that they are pretending doesn't exist. Here's the simple truth about this. It's not yet safe to reopen the country, period. There are a number of states where cases aren't just stagnant, they're actually rising. And not just one, not just two, there are 17 states, more than a third of this country, where cases are on the rise. The idea that we're actually talking about opening the country right now is like letting a family back into a house while a third of it is still on fire. But Republicans don't care, because Republicans run on one thing and one thing only: the economy. And so long as the economy is closed because the virus is still raging, they're in a weak position politically. And so their priority is not waiting until it's safe to be out in public. Their priority is not ensuring that we have enough testing and contact tracing before things can go back to normal. Their priority is not holding off until cases have dropped below key thresholds. Their priority is opening this country as soon as possible so that they can jumpstart the economy. That's it. And if that means people's lives will be put in immediate jeopardy, well, then that's apparently a risk that Republicans are willing to take, because it's not about our safety, it's about their re-elections. And so, predictably, because the Republican Party's official position is that the deadly pandemic sweeping across this country is no biggie, of course it's going to spread. And of course the vectors are going to be the people who refuse to wear masks and pretend that social distancing isn't necessary. And so in effect, the same party that ostensibly has a vested interest in reviving the economy are the ones actually hurting their own cause by ensuring, through their recklessness, that the virus doesn't go away. Imagine doing all of this to protect a talking point, A talking point. Imagine putting colleagues and their families and their children and their neighbors in harm's way because your party decided it's going to pretend that a virus that has killed 100,000 Americans doesn't exist. Because you're so hell-bent on jumpstarting the economy so that you have a talking point in November that you're willing to let American citizens die en masse. Nurses and doctors, grandparents, journalists, cashiers, neighbors, kids. They died because one party in this country decided that their jobs were more important than everyone else's lives. So let's be clear about what should happen here. Like Brian Sims said, Pennsylvania House Speaker Mike Turzai and all members of the Republican leadership who withheld information about who was infected with coronavirus should resign without a shadow of a doubt. But beyond that, there should be investigations and there should be prosecutions. These people covered up the fact that their members were knowingly spreading a lethal virus to protect a talking point. This is no different than prosecutions for people who knowingly gave others AIDS by not telling them they were ill. In 1996, an Oregon man who knew he was infected with HIV was convicted of multiple counts of murder after failing to inform several women of his HIV status after he had unprotected sex with them. If you can explain to me how this is different in the event that someone ultimately contracts coronavirus from a Republican, I'd love to hear it. But remember too that leadership comes from the top. This problem didn't arise in Pennsylvania, it started in January, when Trump set the tone for the Republican Party that their priority wouldn't be containing the spread of the virus, it would be kowtowing to the stock market and pushing for the economy to reopen even as deaths surge. This is the result of failed leadership at every single level of the Republican Party, from the state legislature in Pennsylvania all the way up to the President of the United States. If you like that video, please check out my brand new podcast, No Lie with Brian Tyler Cohen, where I'll cover the most important political stories of the week and interview major players in the world of politics. Available June 1st on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Subscribe now so you don't miss an episode. See you there.